Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a new episode of the FinTech Hunting Podcast. We have not one, but we have two incredible guests for you today. They're mortgage industry thought leaders, technology evangelists. They know everything about automation and how to improve the mortgage process. Please help me welcome to the show Derek Bartley, VP of Product Strategy, Tom Gallucci, EVP of Strategic Sales at Xactus. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Hey, Michael, you're going to make me blush with that intro. I appreciate it.
I know, I'm turning red as we speak.
Well, it is well-deserved. You guys have a wealth of knowledge and expertise. I want to jump right in. We're going to get into all kinds of consumer permission verifications and everything, but I think for our listeners where it's best to start, and Derek, I'm going to start with you. Let's walk through for our audience, how does the current verification process work for most lenders?
Yeah, happy to. Just want to start by thanking you for having us on. Very excited to be here. The current workflow, generally, I'll lead with this. It's not a one size fits all. That being said, for the most part, it's a very linear path that happens with lenders. So ultimately the main requirement when you think about a verification of employment is you have that rigid, that 10 days prior to closing requirement. And that can typically be fulfilled with a VOE. I think that there's been some guideline changes, loosening that up a bit with a pay stub. But at the end of the day, I'm looking at Tom. I'm going to pick on Tom. If Tom's getting ready to close, you need to verify that Tom is still gainfully employed by Xactus before you cut him a check for hundreds of thousands of dollars. So that is the requirement, 10 days prior to closing. Now, along the way up to that point, there's different technology, there's different processes out there, but sticking with that traditional VOE, there's these large instant providers. There's a few different ones in the market. You can go out and you can get an instant VOE to fulfill that requirement. Or, 50-ish% of those employers, they do not contribute, either them as an employer or their payroll provider, they do not contribute to these instant databases. So that's when a processor has to pick up the phone and call Xactus, Tom's employer, to make sure that he's still employed. Along the way, different verifications, there's text transcripts. Those are required, especially for those self-employed borrowers. So, you think about that process. It's not something you're going to do at point of application necessarily, but prior to closing, you will need to fulfill a 4506 order. So that's a very high level of what the process looks like today. But I think that's accurate for most.
Yeah, and I'll even, if you don't mind, take it back a notch, let's say around verification of assets. And, if you don't have a tech-savvy borrower, it can be a very manual process of providing bank statements through an email, maybe a PDF, maybe even taking the statement, physical paper form down to a branch office, having it processed that way, and then you run into all these challenges of what you've provided, is it acceptable information, and do we have to then continue it back and forth and slow down the process to get what you need?
Well, and like you said, as soon as you start introducing more and more of those manual processes, it's more prone to error. It a lot of times can delay the closing or delay moving to the next step in the manufacturing of that loan. So, Tom, let's jump in. I'm going to start with you on this question of, well, what is consumer permission data, and how does it apply to the mortgage process?
Yeah, absolutely. Consumer permission data is the transactional and account level information that a consumer grants permission to a business to access on their behalf. So it's also known as consent data, but essentially consumer permission data can help businesses offer a personalized experience to the consumer while respecting their privacy. And, a great example of this might be retrieving a bank statement electronically or a tax transcript data. And so essentially through a secure third-party portal, a consumer can provide permission to a lender to access their information, whether it be bank account data or text transcript request information, etc. And then that business can simply pull the statement documentation needed. So like in the case of a mortgage, if I just need 2 months bank statements, if I've got access permission by the consumer to that institution, I can go in, or my processor can go in and just pull the bare minimum of what they need to fulfill that condition and move on in the loan process.
Excellent. And I think that really sets the stage. So Derek, I'm going to come back to you. Tom did a great job kind of describing what takes place and how that, consumer data, permission data can be used. But talk to me then about what are the benefits to the lender and what are the benefits to the consumer for replacing that old antiquated process, those manual process with consumer permission verifications?
Yeah, I think for the consumer, it puts them in the driver's seat of their own mortgage process. I think a key thing to understand, and we have these conversations with clients a lot, especially with these consumer permission data products, they can be almost instantly available, but they're not truly an instant product. It is as instant as a consumer takes action to authenticate. So for verification of income or employment, in a consumer permission model, ultimately the lender is going to send an invite or a request to a consumer. They're either going to select their payroll provider or they can search their employer. Once they do that, then they provide their credentials to then create a verification of income or employment report that the lender can then use for qualification. Now, if I'm sending I always like to pick on Tom. I'm going to do it again. If I'm sending Tom that request and he sits on it for a few days, then it might actually be slowing things down. So it's so important to level set up front with the consumer that this whole mortgage process that might feel a little taboo, or maybe a little antiquated and slow. You can actually help speed things up by adopting these technologies, and then not only does it provide speed for the consumer, it's also more secure for them. Typically when someone's sharing documents with a loan officer or lender, there's some really great portals, secure portals out there to upload documents. I think reality is that a lot of people, they just kind of fall back on maybe taking a picture, sending an email, or downloading a PDF, sending it as an email.
Text message or
exactly, and these things can get compromised. Emails get compromised. Email accounts do. And not only is it then available on the lender side, which is probably more secure than maybe I'll pick on myself, my 15-year-old Yahoo account that I've used for everything. That might not be the most secure place to have my pay stub and W-2s and bank statements living in my sent folder for someone to get into and then go searching around it and find those things. So it is a secure way of doing it. It's a faster way of doing it. And then that also ties into the value proposition for lenders too. Not only are they getting secure information, but they're getting it in a manner where, if you think about those manual examples of fulfilling that VOE, you don't have to play phone tag anymore. You maybe don't have to do a conference call with that borrower to share authorization that they can even grant that information to a third party that they're unfamiliar with, whether that's Xactus, a third party, or the mortgage lender, the one fulfilling that manual. So there's a lot of benefit there. I think that lenders are also very cost conscious too. So when we work with them, we try to find the right kind of mix of products and solutions to provide that value to them, but also try to help them optimize their vendor spend. So we're very, very conscious about that. It's something that we lead with. And I think that those are reasons that make these newer products really valuable for our clients.
Excellent. Great insights there. So Tom, I'm going to come to you and say, where does Xactus then come into play with this consumer permission data? Where do you guys fit into this whole process and equation?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I'll preface with constantly looking at solutions, both internally and through third parties out there that we can add on to our suite too to give the most comprehensive, customizable approach to verifications, whether it be single source or through a waterfall approach for our clients. So one that comes to example, we're in the process of rolling out Halcyon for tax transcripts, where consumer can go in via text message into a portal just how Derek described and provide authorization then to the lender in a matter of minutes or hours to be able to go in, request the transcript information they may need at a single cost. And if they have to actually go back and do a re-verify or pull additional data, there's no additional cost. It's all under the cost of that one pull there. And then we're also looking on the verification side too about adding some additional third parties in there as well. Another example I would throw out that's a little bit different than consumer permission data, but it kind of works the same way through our VeriSite product on the valuation side, which is very popular with home equity lines of credit, where a consumer can be empowered in the process. Instead of having to have a drive-by appraisal ordered, they can go in and they can provide photos inside and outside of their property that are GPS located to validate the location and submit that information in that way through a secure portal. Stay up to date on the process and help expedite getting your loan to close.
Awesome. Great insights there. Derek, talk to me about what are kind of the current adoption rates for consumer permission data, and how are they now accepting it? Is there still hesitation? Are consumers warming up to the idea? Is it more of an education on the loan officer and whatever loan officer explains it the best and gives the values, then they're signing up? Walk me through a little bit of adoption and kind of where are some of the hurdles still and where do you see it going?
Yeah, I think you mentioned education. I think that's huge. I think that is very important. It's very important for the loan officer to understand how the product works, what the value of the product is to the end user, the consumer in this case. I think that really drives adoption. You're selling it, right? Like you're selling this product and how it gets used. And if you don't understand how it works, it's really tough to sell something that you don't understand. So for us, it's just so important to continue to educate how these things work, why they're important, how they provide value. So, going back to us having this conversation with you, we want to continue to get out there, to talk about the values of these products. And, I think adoption for these things in general, even outside of mortgage, we do a lot of these things without even really, knowing or understanding it. There's a lot in the finance sector. Different products that you can use to link your accounts, whether it's a Plaid or, there's all these different technology and account aggregators behind the scenes. But so often, we're getting more and more comfortable with sharing our information because we're hoping to see value, whether it's a finance tool, trying to nail down what your net worth is, or trying to find, are there, debt consolidation opportunities for me? Or even these new accounts or these new applications out there, Rocket Money, Experian, where you can find opportunities to reduce your monthly costs through subscriptions. So I think that the average consumer, there's much more visibility into these consumer permission models out there, and we don't really tie those things together in our minds, but it's the same consumer driven consumer permission technology behind the scenes. So if we were to sit down and have this conversation 10 years ago, I don't know that any of us working in finance would have been super comfortable with the idea, but I'll speak for myself. I use those applications. I love those applications. I never imagined that I'd be so willing to share my credentials, but now that I kind of understand that it's a trusted source and it's secure. And I have visibility now within my banking applications to see where I've granted access, something that wasn't there 10 years ago, even 5 years ago. I think that, as time goes on, I think that adoption will continue to grow. So it's been an exciting time, and love having this conversation.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. Tom, where is all this going? Where do you see, more applications using consumer permission verification? How's this going to continue to not only improve the mortgage process, but hopefully start lowering a little bit of the cost to originate?
Well, absolutely. Piggyback on Derek's point, I think the first key is creating a comfort level with the consumer, understanding the security that is in place to protect their information to help us drive up adoption rates. Talk to some lender clients of mine from the past that had adopted some of these solutions on the verification side, and they found positioning with the originator was key to help move adoption rates up from 25 to 35%, from anywhere up to 40 to 50%.
Wow.
And that's somewhat incremental, but it's progressing in the right direction. So, I think with the evolution of automation and AI-focused tools within the mortgage industry, we're going to keep finding ways to more directly involve the consumer in the process, through their favorite device, so that they've got, to Derek's point, more insight and more transparency into what they're sharing. I think opens the floodgates within the mortgage process to empower the consumer to provide any documentation we may need to help speed up the loan process, and then in turn bring down costs to produce because it's less turn times essentially. And what we're trying to do here at Xactus is offer more solutions under our umbrella so that you can tie those into one single provider. And that's also a way to help bring down the cost to produce a loan.
Well, and I think a lot of it makes it a lot easier for the borrower once they understand. It's a pain in the butt trying to find those documents and trying to find those statements, and then how am I going to get them to my lender? And I don't really want to email him, but man, I really want that house, and he told me I had to get the documents to him today. And I think when you guys start really peeling this back and educating the consumer and educating the loan officers who are sharing this information with the consumer, because most of the time you guys aren't dealing with the borrower directly, that when the loan officer finally understands how it's going to make their life easier, how they're not going to have to track down. I do a lot of coaching with loan officers, and during the COVID years when loans were just flying off the shelf, what they always said was where they spent the most time was tracking all of the documents down. That's one of the biggest costs, labor cost is tracking down all the documents. Well, if they can go direct to source, if you guys can streamline and improve that process, that's a huge value proposition for the loan officer and a much better lending experience for the borrower. You guys, we could talk forever. You guys have so many cool things to share. Derek, where are you guys, promoting this? How can people get a hold of you? Are there upcoming conferences they should meet you at? Can they find you on the website? What can they do to find out more about all the incredible things that Xactus is doing?
I'll let Tom take this one.
Well, you can find us at Xactus.com, or if you ever want to learn more information or learn about our product suite, we can be emailed at sales@Xactus.com. And most importantly, make sure to follow us on LinkedIn. But we'll be very active on the fall conference circuit as it comes back up. I'm sure between MBA National, Mortgage Collaborative, Acuma, Lenders One, we'll be out there and about.
Well, I look forward to seeing you guys there. Hopefully we can have another discussion, shoot some more video at one or multiple of those conferences. But I can't thank you guys enough for sharing your time and insights. I think once people truly understand the value proposition and the impact it can make, they're crazy not to take a look at it and actually to start implementing. So thank you so much for being guests on this episode of the FinTech Hunting Podcast.
Thank you so much, Michael.